super
Rob.
cool to kind of be back here for our third podcast. Like, go figure. I've got to say, a year ago, I wouldn't have even thought about doing a podcast. And now I'm like, every time you're like, oh, it's time to do one, I'm like, yes, let's go, let's do it. Um, so I think what I would like to chat about this time is kind of the different perspectives. Because you and I obviously have different perspectives. I mean, you've got your own stuff happening, but you talk from that of a family member, and I had, family members with their own stuff, but I kind of talk from my own perspective of, living with my mental health issue. Um, and I call it an issue instead of an illness because for me, like mental health, mental wellness is on this continuum, right? And there are some days that like the wheels are falling off and I'm like, ooh, how do I get through this? And there are other days that I'm like, woohoo, life is amazing. And not because I'm what the world likes to call manic, what I call energetic, but just because that's how people are. If you look around everyone, right? Like our mental health is on that continuum. And I think the piece about mental health issues, challenges, and talking from a lived experience perspective are that place where it really has a huge impact. And maybe the way you thought life was going to be isn't the way it is anymore. It's that significant impact piece. And look, for me, I know that you and I have giggled at times with our different perspectives. And look, I know family and friends are well meaning, but sometimes I just want to say to them, but out. Like, stop trying to fix off and save me. And I know when I met you, you may have been a fixer, solver, saver. And even in the journey since we've known each other, like there are times I'm like, yo, Charlotte, have you ever wondered what your daughter's thinking? Have you ever thought about how you can support her just to live her life? And, you know, we all make mistakes, right? I think sometimes the world thinks because we have a mental health issue, we should be wrapped up in cotton wool because what if we make a mistake? What if we fall over? Like, isn't that how we learn? And I should be quiet for a minute because I know I like to chat a lot, but I'd love to hear your thoughts so far about those different perspectives turning up.
Well, I want to start off that I will always defend the family side of what we do because we try our best and we're always just, in a perfect world, if we could all take the people we care about the most and wrap them up, yeah, and save them from everything that can happen that's bad in our opinion, of course, that's what we would do. But then there is that place of, with allowing space for them to explore, comes that resilience. And so I wanted to start this conversation around, yeah, absolutely. If I could have found that magic pill and fixed everything that was wrong in my family's life, absolutely I would have taken it. But the difference is that, it doesn't exist, no matter what people think might, and whether it's the latest vitamin craze or the latest medication. It may work for some, it may not work for others. And it's supporting the person who's considering taking it instead of pushing it down their throat. And that's what I
Not
used to do.
considering taking it.
Or not considering taking it. Absolutely. And so where I got it wrong, and I am throwing myself under the bus, is years ago, I was looking for that magic fix defined by me. And I was deciding what my child needed to take and what they didn't need to take, and never asking what she wanted, because I didn't think she was capable of making that decision. And I sure did a disservice to her on that. And if I could do a few things over, it would be having more curious conversations, hearing what her definition of what she wanted out of the life was, and not pushing how I defined her life. And I think that was one of the biggest takeaways of what I wish I could have done differently. And everybody who's listening who's saying, yeah, but I experienced everything with that. Yeah, but I thought what was happening in our family was the worst of the worst of the worst. I was terrified of outcomes that were very scary. So every decision I made was based around fear, and not truly exploring all the options, just going towards the one that I thought was the best fit at that moment. And, you know, 15 years later and a lot of education and lived experience, there's a few things, like I said, I would like a redo on if I could. And I think, Robyn, why we want to talk about this is because I have one perspective that has, changed over the 18 years of this journey, my journey in mental health, supporting family. And then you have your perspective of, your lived experience. And I want to clarify, we all have mental health. And yes, I've been on that journey for a lot longer. I'm going to be, well, I'm much younger than Robyn, but I'm almost 60.
Oh.
And I've been on this journey. But when it came to, oh my gosh, realization was when my daughter was really struggling. And so that's kind of where I base my years of experience on. But I interrupted you, Robyn.
No. Like I think we all do the best we can in this situation that we're given and with the information that we have. And, I look back at my life and thinking about families, right? My dad had his own experience of bipolar disorder. I've got mine. And, in the last couple of years, my father died 10 years ago, and I've been having conversations with my mum. And one day, like, we were having this conversation about how she supported him from her understanding and perspective. And like I was sharing my experiences and the kind of ways I talk with people about, how just to be with the person, right? And be curious and ask questions. And my mum started to cry, and like it just, my soul hurt, because she said, I wish I had this information when your father was alive, because I never thought about it like that. And I was like, I never intended for you to feel bad or upset or like you'd done something wrong, because you did the best that you can do in that moment. And I thought about saying but I want to say, and like, life is not easy. Whether we have a mental health diagnosis or not, life throws curveballs, and life doesn't always go as planned. We have good days and not good days, and we're dealing with stuff. And I think that cotton wool piece, like, I know where it comes from, but it doesn't help us in the long run if someone's always wrapping us up and trying to like support us to never have life experiences. Because, maybe I'm cranky one day. It doesn't mean I've got depression. Maybe I'm, excited to see you. That doesn't mean I'm manic. Maybe I'm having a normal reaction to something that people just make these assumptions are about our mental health. And I know there have been, a number of relationships I've been in, and maybe you could have previously called me a serial monogamist because, I was in relationships, and if I finished one, I was into another. Mm, since I've been in Canada, right, 8 years, that's not the case. Oh, I don't know. Maybe Canadian girls feel a little different about me. Who knows? But one of those things is when people knew about my mental health issue, my normal responses to stuff were considered to be about my mental health. Like, if I had a bad day at work and I came home, there was this, oh, you must be getting depressed, or you must be getting this. Or if I spent money on a credit card, it was like, oh, we have to be careful, you're getting manic. Instead of allowing me to be me and have conversations about, like, can I help people understand where it does tip over from being like a normal human reaction to something to, oh, actually, maybe I do need to keep an eye on this. Look, right now I've had a mate who's dealt with so many things. And when I say mate, that's Australian for friend, not lover. Um, but they've had all of this stuff happen. People die, work stuff, rock up, personal stuff. And, they were talking about feeling unwell. And I said to them, hey, I want you to kind of consider maybe you're just having a normal reaction to life and it's not about your mental health diagnosis. And I I'm not sure that families and friends are in those conversations because I think they're so scared about what's going to happen to us, that there's a jump into, oh, right? And even, I'm gonna poke the bear here a little with you, Charlotte. Like, I know your daughter decided she wanted to create a life for herself and move to a different part of the country. And you were like, oh, we have to get work like at least every month there. And I was like, whoa, hang on, why? No,
Yeah.
actually, she's going to reinvent herself and be her, not this person with a mental health diagnosis. And, I'm going to throw it to you because I'm looking at your face going, oh.
No, and where my head goes, would I have done the same for every member of my family? And if the answer is a different answer, why is it? And I think if you're doing the yeah, but they have a mental health diagnosis, I would love you to explore what has it that thinks that you need to do something different. Because one of the things that we get wrong on messaging on the family side is if my messaging is, I don't trust that you can live this great life, why am I putting my belief onto that person? And I think that's really unfair because you can have a great life regardless of a diagnosis. And I look at you, Robyn, I mean, you're about ready to get on a plane and go halfway around the world. And I'm not like, oh, I got to go with you because I know you've got those supports in place that if life gets hard, you can do this. And if life is great, you can do this. And I trust that if you need something from me, you'll ask. And that's what my hope is with other family members. Can you start to consider your messaging to your family member? Is it that they've got it and that you trust that they'll ask you if they need support? And so that's where Some families are just everything about what they say to the person is, I don't trust you with your mental health.
Is it, I do have a question. Is it, I don't trust you with your mental health? Or is it, I don't trust the mental health issue and therefore I'm going to be extra worried about you?
Yeah, I think it can go both ways. I think that there's the fear that in the moment when life is hard, they're going to choose the wrong way to support themselves, and wrong meaning whatever me as a parent is going to define as wrong. And I
Stop
and
defining
never
it
ask
for us.
pardon.
Stop defining it
I
for us.
know, because that's what we do. Oh my goodness. It's a bad breakup you've had. I'm really now thinking you're gonna drink too much or you're gonna drive your car too fast. So I just need to keep you home tonight. And so these are some of the things that play in our head. And would I be doing it for every member of my family during a bad breakup? I don't know. I don't think I would. And that's where I love asking families to start to question why they're going down that rabbit hole of it's gonna go really bad for the person that has the mental health diagnosis. I know I used to do that.
It's interesting because I think about you saying that, and you know, I feel for my mum, right? Because I am now living in my fourth country. And
Mhm.
at one point in a 12-year period, I moved to New Zealand, back to Australia, back to New Zealand, back to Australia, and back to New Zealand before I then moved to the US and then moved Alaska, Texas, Colorado, Texas, and then to Canada, where I moved to Winnipeg, now Ottawa. And, you know, now I'm in this, am I going to stay here? And I think, my poor mum dealing with me and kind of thinking, does she have to continue to worry about me? And I know mums, I mean, as you said before, you're almost 60. I just turned 60. Not that much difference, but like I think parents are always going to worry about their kids. It's the extent of where they go with that. And I think you talked before about what are we saying to our loved ones, you know, and sometimes we might love them, we mightn't like them as much,
Okay.
but like, what are we saying if we're continually kind of worried? Let me wrap you up. Oh, no, you can't do that on your own. Like, I know for me, and I've shared, you know, before that, I'm choosing a path without medication because it felt like it took me away. And, you know, I did the work to work out how to support myself in other ways. I'm not anti or pro meds. I'm pro informed choice that people look at all of the options and decide for themselves. And, you know, if they don't want to look at all the options, that's their choice as long as they know there are others. And I think there are people who are like, oh no, you should be on medication. And I just wrote a self-paced learning course called Getting Rid of the Should. So feel free to look for that one. But it's that place of what message are we hearing, and are we getting the term learned helplessness? Oh, you can't do that. You need this to be able to do, like, live in a place by yourself, or you always have to be careful. And you know, I sometimes wonder if, like, we teach that in the mental health services, and we teach that to families who then teach that to their person with a mental health issue. And so maybe I start to believe I can't do
Yeah.
it.
And
And that feels a little, well, a word that comes to mind, which please, it's not that, but it feels criminal. It's not intentional, but it just feels icky for me.
And I think that one of the things that's going to be awesome about this podcast is when we have guests come on who have diagnosis. And, when we can introduce this to families to say, hey, listen, this person's having a great life and they have a diagnosis of a mental health challenge. And I think that can just start to break down that shame and blame, or that stigma around you're never going to have a great life. Because that's sometimes what we're feeling on the family side. And it's not that we mean harm by it. It's just that that's what, when you Google, or, that's what you're going to see first often, is what you cannot have when you have this diagnosis. And then the messaging comes from us on the family side. Are you sure you want to try for that job? Because there might be a lot of stress in it. Are you sure you want to go into that relationship? Because what if it ends the way it did last time and you got really depressed? Like, all of those mixed messages of you can't do. And like I said, we don't mean to, but sometimes, because our intention is we want to keep you safe,
Yeah.
but the messaging we get wrong.
Yeah, it's I think it's life. It's tough, right? And I've heard people say to me, "Yeah, that's okay. That person has a great life, but that's not like my person."
Yeah. And I was thinking, as you sneeze, Robin, for this second, I was going to this event that a friend of mine had said to me, oh, you might run into my child. And oh, just heads up, they struggle with anxiety. And I had met the child, and there was nothing that said to me that that child was struggling with anxiety. And the reason I share that story is they were showing up as who they wanted to be in that moment. And and mom had given me the heads up, oh, this might show up, or this might show up. And they were just a normal, young adult, wanting to have a great night that night. And why did I share that story? Well, a couple of reasons. Sometimes, as parents, we want to shelter and make sure our kids are always safe. And sometimes those subtle labels that we're sharing with our friends and family
Mm.
can change how friends and family then talk to our children. Because they might not engage in a conversation because, oh, it might upset them, or dismiss them because, oh, they've got a mental health diagnosis, because that can happen too. And I just want to encourage, families, just to let their person be and let them show up as whichever version of them they are that day. And because that's their life. It's not us dictating their life.
It's interesting, right? Because I think, and we're going to have a podcast about this one, but I think, society has their expectations of how someone should, again, should show up, getting rid of the shoulds. Like, it's good cause, but it's that place of who determines that. I mean, if we look at the world right now, it's pretty divided about how, like, what's okay and what's not,
Yeah.
and who determines that that's okay and that's not. And if we look through history, like, things change. What was okay, years ago isn't okay now. Words that were used in the past have different meanings now. And so we will have a whole podcast on, I mean, the term consensus reality, about whose reality is it and who determines it, and how do we get consensus so there's agreement about this is okay and this isn't? It's just like opening up a can of worms, the discussion about, can we be with people how they are? If they're not like hurting someone else, they're not, well, that's a different conversation about, the discussion about self-harm for oneself. And we will have that because that's also a can of worms. But like, if someone's just living their life and it's not looking like what someone else wants, does it really matter? Like, who determines that? And so I just ask families to, consider that. Can they let go of their expectations of someone and just be? And, I think I also want to do a podcast, and I might get a bit of flack from the lived experience community about this, but I also want to have the conversation about, occasionally we get a little entitled about, well, I've got a mental health issue, so, oh, I can't. And maybe I've learned that, or maybe that's something there, and I don't want to go into it today. I think it's a podcast unto itself, but I think we have to look at all of those things: learned helplessness, consensus, reality, entitlement. But a start is for all of us, like, to support people to feel seen, heard, and validated.
And with that, Robyn, I think we've left the listeners with some things to think about. And my hope is that, whatever side you're on, what lived experience or supporting somebody with lived experience of a mental health challenge, what is the messaging behind what we're saying on both sides?